Will y'all stand for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mickey Martin? Here. Kathy Altensee. Joy Sellers. Here. Nikki Bender. Supervisor Sellers.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes of the September 2nd, 2014 Town Board regular meeting. I need a motion and a second.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Sellers, second by Martin. Need a roll call?
You want to do a roll call?
No, we'll do the voice vote. Wait a second. Let everybody take a look at it. So everybody saw the minutes? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. The next item on the agenda is the presentation of the audit report from Whitley.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Greg Down, partner on the job for Freeport Township. This is Chris Barnhart, I'm in charge and manager on the job. The first report would be the thicker of the two with the nice cover on it. That's if you go to the first unnumbered page on the table of contents, it's actually page number 1 on the bottom. That's our independent auditor's report, which is the primary basis and the culmination and the summary of what our audit was.
Okay.
And again, the opinion talks, it first of all identifies what financial statements were audited. The second paragraph talks about what management's responsibility these are. Even though we assist you with preparing the financial statements, they're your representations, you're required to take responsibility for those. And the auditor's responsibility, our auditor's responsibility is to audit those financial statements. And in both cases, the management's responsibility is to make sure that we have proper internal controls so that the financial statements are free of material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error or something else. Our responsibility is to plan our audit to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. And we won't get into trying to define what material is because it's different to different people. But for our purposes, we have to quantify that both quantitatively as well as qualitatively, what material is. And basically what it's just saying is that reasonable assurance means we don't look at every single transaction. It's just not feasible, nor is an audit designed to do that. So, in our opinion, says the financial statements referred to above present fair in all material respects. With respect to modified cash basis financial position, I'm sorry, that's on page 2. The governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the township at April 30th, 2014, and the respective changes in modified cash basis financial position thereof for the year that ended, in accordance with the modified cash basis of accounting. We just had an emphasis of matters that the township elected during the year to change the way it prepared its financial statements from the modified accrual basis, which is from a GASB standpoint GAAP, to the modified cash basis, which is an other comprehensive basis of accounting that's recognized. And probably that method is used by probably 80% of the townships and other governmental entities. Basis of accounting, again, is just to draw the attention to the use of the financial statements that the basis of accounting is modified cash, and that's explained in note 1 to the financial statements. And then the other matter talks about additional information that goes beyond the basic financial statements, which would be the information behind the footnotes. And again, page 3, just again to summarize, the government-wide statements takes a broad look at the township. and basically combines all your funds into kind of one commingled amount, just kind of get a broad overall view. And when they talk about modified cash basis, that makes, that there are some modifications to the cash basis. True cash basis is we start with the beginning cash, we add receipts, we take a disbursement, and then cash. But modified cash does modify the statements to the extent that fixed assets are capitalized and depreciation related thereon is recorded, as well as certain liabilities. Now, if you had any long-term debt, or you had some notes or some installment obligations, those would also be probably shown in that situation. But the only liability you had were some payroll withholdings at the end of the fiscal year. And so net position is actually kind of the equity or the net position on a modified cash basis. And that usually has three categories: net investment in capital assets, which is kind of your net book value of your capital assets. Restricted net position are those were restricted by third-party or statutory requirements. Typically, those are your special tax levies for specific items. And then unrestricted is everything else that doesn't fall into those two positions. Now, page 4, I don't know that is not one of my favorite statements, because I think it's a little kind of confusing, but what it starts out with what our expenses were for general government, and then specific areas, those are by functions, the programs, welfare. And then we kind of go to the right and say, how would we pay for those services? Those are based from general revenues, which are in the middle of the page all the way to the right. Property taxes, other taxes, replacement tax, unrestricted investment earnings, other miscellaneous, and gain or loss and disposal of assets, which is really only recorded for purposes of the government-wide statements. So these first two statements really are outside of your normal day-to-day operations. And most governments operate on a fund basis. General fund or town fund, which is typically used for most individual purpose. And then your other types of funds are, at least from your standpoint, are based upon your specific tax levies, or sometimes capital projects funds, if they're specific to a project, are also shown. And then on pages 5, page 5, the balance sheet modified cash basis again shows those, they only show the major governmental funds, which kind of the gap basis. General fund is always considered major. And then depending upon the size of the fund, or the number of transactions, or the size of the transactions, could define it as a major fund. General assistance is defined. That definition can change year to year, by the way. And then all other governmental type funds are kind of combined into one other column, so you get your totals again. Page 6 is just a reconciliation between the two types, the government-wide versus your fund statements. On the government-wide, you're capitalizing fixed assets and capital assets. On the fund statements, you don't the expense out just like you normally do on your operations. On page 7 again, on the major governmental type funds, shows the the revenues, expenditures, and other financing sources or uses, and the net change in those fund balances. So you can see how they did in the kind of the major funds in the broad categories. I will say just wanted in the column, the other governmental funds, we have Chris, all the way in the back.
32 and 33.
Page 32 and 33 combines, there you can see the detail of the specific funds that don't meet the definition of a major governmental fund. But page 32 again shows the balance sheet, which is primarily cash in those funds at the end of the year. And then on page 33 shows the change in fund balance, which is the third line from the bottom for those non-major governmental funds as well.
Question?
Yeah.
Great. Net change in fund balance shows 162,689. Would that be what we used out of our, I'm sorry, page 7?
Page 7 again? Okay. sorry, go ahead.
With that, what we used out of our fund balance, 162,689 this year?
For the total township.
Right, for
All
the total
funds
township,
together.
all of
That's
them
correct.
together, yes.
That's correct.
So that's why we're down from 898 to 735,
That
correct?
is correct.
Okay.
Most of that again. If you look at kind of the elements of what that change was, you can see that the general systems fund probably contributed the most of that,
Mhm.
142,000. The other governmental funds as a whole, about $23,000 down. And the general fund, of course, went down because it subsidized, transferred $117,000 during the year
Right.
to the general systems fund.
Mhm, mhm.
We're starting to see what the other, yeah, it looks like IMRF took a chunk out too. That was the majority of the other non-major governmental funds. The footnotes, which start on page 9 and essentially run through page 21, are just further explanations of the numbers. Most of these are required disclosures. Again, disclose the change in the accounting method for preparing financial statements to the modified cash basis was the last one. The rest detail out lease commitments, risk management, IMRF disclosure information, which, again, a lot of these disclosures are going to change this. I don't think it won't affect next year, it'll be the following year. April 30th, 2016, those financial statements. The front part of the report won't change, but the footnotes and the definitions, the methods on how they're accounted, it won't affect your funding and how you go about your funding. You're still going to pay whatever IMRF calls you to pay, but for accounting purposes, the disclosure as to what the fund liability is going to be will be significantly different. Let's see.
On page 14, you talk about the unassigned fund balance. That's different than the fund balance at the end of the year, correct? Like on page 7 where it says fund balance end of the year, you've got an unassigned fund balance. Is that a portion of that?
The unassigned fund balance is actually the general fund. It's not.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not obligated.
Oh, I got it. I
for,
see it. Yep,
Any particular tax purpose.
I see it.
There's no outside restrictions
gotcha.
on that. Where page 5, I think, you can see under the fund balances, the various
Yeah.
categories.
Yep,
Excuse me, there's restricted, there's assigned,
yeah, I see it.
there's various ones, but you have just basically 2 categories. Again, a lot of this information is historical, so you've probably gotten that information throughout the year. But, the other thing, by definition, because the capital projects fund does not have a specific project that that money is dedicated to or that we assigned it to, or the board's taking action with respect to that. Page 31, just for accounting purposes and reporting purposes, that is combined with the general fund just for the report, the capital projects fund. By definition. Doesn't affect your day-to-day operations or what you're doing, it's just for financial reporting purposes. If it's not assigned or designated, it becomes part of the general fund.
So it's
Just for
the general
purposes of
fund plus
reporting.
capital for reporting purposes
reporting purposes,
comes to that
that's correct.
497, okay.
Excuse me. The other report, the small report, is our communications letter to those charged with governance. It's required communication, generally accepted auditing standards. Again, again, pretty much reiterates again what our responsibility is versus management's in terms of our engagement and our, what we perform.
What page are you on?
I'm sorry, I was just page 1, but going to page 2 of, it's the smaller report, I'm sorry, the unbound.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Got it.
there you go. Again, the first couple pages down to halfway on the second page. Most of it, again, boilerplate, discussing what our responsibilities are, our effect, other information in the financial statements. The other thing is just to point out that the accounting principles that the township uses preparing our note 1 to the financial statements. If there are any significant estimates that are used in preparing the financial statements, we're supposed to discuss them there. Probably the only significant estimate used in preparing the financial statements is the estimated useful lives and depreciating those assets, which again only affect those first 2 statements in the financial statements. We encountered no significant difficulties in performing the audit. We did have some adjusting entries. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Excuse me. Disagreements with management. We did not have any significant or any disagreements with management, especially with respect to disclosures in the financial statements or how to prepare the financial statements. Management did give us certain representations about the financial statements, a copy of which is attached. Management did not consult with other towns that we're aware of regarding particularly disclosure matters in the financial statements. Other findings or audits, any questions we had during the year were just in the normal course of our businesses, being your outside accountants. Internal control matters, again, I think we've just got I think we've got pretty decent controls. Probably the 2 that always want to, we still prepare the financial statements. Whether we've got somebody on the board that would know whether disclosures or not are missing or not, we still make this effect. And again, the primary reason we do that is that this happens to be one of the examples in the standards that says that that's probably a control deficiency. And then just segregation of duties. There's just going to be times where one person has the ability to pick a transaction from beginning to end.
Do we, I'm sorry, Mr. Sills, do we actually have segregation of duties?
For what our numbers allow us, yes.
Yeah.
What does that mean, what our numbers allow us?
What our numbers allow us, we don't have a financial department. We have one person who is the financial, chief financial officer. As it relates to printing checks, she prints them. I can't print them. I sign. Someone else put them in an envelope, and someone else takes them to the post office. So
Yeah.
that's
So that's pretty good with a small office from that
Okay.
standpoint. So again, I think because of our size, a material item probably would be discovered, not necessarily prevented. So internal controls are supposed to do 2 things: prevent misstatement or fraud. The other thing is to detect it. So again, because of our limited resources, it's probably pretty easy to detect. And you got budgetary controls too. It'd be pretty easy to detect significant transactions, not necessarily prevent them from that standpoint.
So even though you say this is the one above that is a significant deficiency, you're saying that for an office our size,
I think we're doing pretty good.
It's
You have some
understandable.
compensating controls from that standpoint.
okay.
The other thing we'd like to point out is that the board's responsibility, actually, has a responsibility as part of that internal control system. And that is the review of financial information, the inquiry, as we just did, as to what certain controls we have. Doesn't mean to micromanage management, but
No,
you still
just-
need to know,
Mhm.
have a general awareness of what those disclosures are. And your budgetary controls are probably your most significant control you have in relation to expenditures. So. And again, attached to that with our the journal entries, I'd say this year went very well, especially considering the change in software as well as the accounting system. I'd say the only difficult thing we had was actually getting started. And I think part of that was because we had, Liz doing the accounting, wasn't there for the whole year as part of that transaction. So QuickBooks is not necessarily the panacea, especially for governmental accounting. And I would say on the income statement side with the revenue expenses, that probably was okay. But QuickBooks doesn't help our balance sheet side of it very well sometimes. So there was a number of unclassified transactions. Now, once we kind of sat down with Liz and went through and did a little more training and talking to her, she caught on extremely quick. And what we did propose some journal entries, not to go back and necessarily tweak every single one of those transactions, but we proposed the adjustments, especially on the balance sheet side, to get it to where it needed to be. We knew what the numbers should be, but it just wasn't cost efficient for us to go back and try to tweak every single transaction. So
So at the top, right, it says KAG 611.
those are copies of our journal entries from our audit software. So that's Chris Garn, right?
Oh, that's Chris,
I don't-
okay.
I don't
And
know
who's
the middle initial.
GAD?
GAD?
That's Greg Dunham.
Oh, that's you,
me.
Greg, okay. Thank you.
Those were we just copy the journal entries out of our software
it.
system. So.
Okay. Sorry,
Those were proposed, but they were reviewed by Liz. She reviewed them and approved them and obeyed them. So I would say, for the first year on that system, it went about as well as I expected it to. A little bit better, but I think as long as we make sure that we've got a class on every single transaction on both sides, as long as we remember that fund accounting, typically you're going to have two sides to an entry, especially if it's affecting two different funds. So I really think that progress has been made since that time, especially with Chris's dealings, I think, with Liz since that time.
Tweaking use of the QuickBooks.
And that's interesting, you bring up the QuickBooks is not the most, and yet TOI not only promotes it, they include it in classes
In
every
trainings.
year
Oh, no, I understand.
as one of the most.
And that's because
Yeah.
most of those are small townships that have maybe 1, 2, 3 funds. You all have a general fund, maybe a small general assistance, and 1 or 2 road funds.
Yeah.
Like I said, for the income and expense side, not a problem, because budgets is a problem. But it's the other side where accountants always get kind of hung up on, is the balance sheet side, segregating it by funds. So it's a little tough sometimes, but I would think Intuit could tweak that enough to make that easier, but must not be in their financial reports.
Maybe someday.
But I would say that we see that consistently. We do the small ones when I get audited once every 4 years, so
Okay.
we see those a lot. And we see some that, QuickBooks, most significant.
Okay.
It's workable, you just gotta know how to do it.
Right.
You gotta know how to massage.
So that's what you have to know how to do.
Well, I think you people, I mean, if you're gonna use it, you need to do it. And again, I think with the communication we've had with with Liz and staff here. Picked it up a little fast, so. That's all I had.
Can I ask one question? Greg, no matter what government organization I represent, I've asked you this in the past, you've probably heard it a dozen times already. We have to deal with GASB, which is the Governmental Accounting Standard Boards that specify how the audit is done. Remember a few years ago, we had GASB 3454 coming up, which created terror in a lot of governmental units. Is there any change in the GASB standards affecting the town of Freeport that are anticipated in the next couple of years? I noticed you said the footnotes are going to change for the fiscal year effective ending on April 30th, 2016. Anything else significant
Well, what
on the
I would say, if you hadn't changed the modified cash basis, this GASB 68 that we were talking about, basically would have thrown into that government-wide statement, the very first statement that showed your net position or net assets, whatever you want to call it. The full liability of the IMRF, the unfunded actuarial liability, would have to have been shown as a liability, which for a lot of governments, it just makes no sense, because that immediately, and I'll say this, there are some governments, whether they be community colleges or school districts, if they're on the accrual basis, they show that full liability on that, they're going to be in a negative position. Most of them are going to be negative. The page 22, and again, that would have affected it, but for your footnotes, right now, they're saying the net pension obligation annually is something like, I think it's footnote 6 on page 18, says the net IMRF pension obligation, by definition of what NPO and net obligation is, was about 20,000, 19,684. Again, because you modified cash basis, that doesn't show up on your financial statements anymore. On page 22, if you look at the unfunded AAL, which is in 1, 2, 3, 4 column over, it says B minus A, 413,000. That's the accrual liability that would have been shown on those government-wide statements. So that, because you change your kind of method, that won't be shown. And again, I don't think that's necessarily a problem, as long as the disclosure shows that that's what the unfunded actuarial liability is going to be in the future. So, you know, AMRF is just now starting to get those disclosure information out for some governments. I don't think yours will probably be coming on. I would expect till probably January. They'll be sending out a letter with that information to be shared.
But there's no new GASB standards
Not
coming
that's going
down.
to significantly affect the township at this point, no, that I'm aware of.
Greg, you did a little bit different on the schedule of revenues and expenditures. I think last year they were kind of all together. Now you did them separately, the general fund, GA, capital.
Major funds were shown separately in previous years,
Yeah,
which, like the general fund and the GA
well,
are considered
no,
major
here's
funds.
what I was,
Well, again, because you were
we
preparing
had
your
general,
financial
GA, capital, other, and then total. And this time what you did is, it looks like you took just the general fund and went through the whole original, final, actual, which we didn't have before. But now you've got it in here under general fund.
What you're looking at there in last year's book, it would be compared to page 7 in this year's book. Just happens to only be on one page versus last year we had it opened up on a couple pages there.
Okay, let me look. Okay, so you went general, general assistance, other, and total. Okay. Okay. Okay, but last year, we didn't see original budget, final budget, actual budget, and then over, under.
It should be further back in the last year's report. It'd be, well, further in the back of the report.
Oh, it's back this way.
Right, look right
After
after
the
the
note.
footnotes. Keep going.
Okay, page
Okay.
26, I think it is. I see some.
Okay.
It's on page 23 of it.
Keep going.
The old audit?
No, keep going. You're talking about last year?
Yeah.
He's talking about last year.
Page 32.
32.
Oh, 32. Oh, I see what you did. Okay. Okay. All right.
Which there, because of switching to the modified cash basis of accounting, those comparative to the budget numbers are not required anymore. When I asked Patrick and Liz if they wanted to keep them, they said, yeah, at least for this year.
Yeah. Good information, yeah.
Okay. So then, this one would be on page 33 also. Okay. Then general assistance, okay. Page 35. Page 38, okay. Got it.
We had additional schedules in the past too, because we had to take it from the modified accrual to the
Yes.
budgetary basis, which
Yes.
is a cash basis, which we do not have to do right now.
Okay. There was one other question I had. Okay, when I looked at the income and the revenue, the expenses for 2014 and the revenue, there was a deficit of, well, a use of the surplus of 132,691. But then in here, I saw a different figure. Let me look. I just wondered why the expense and the revenue from 2014 was different than the net change in fund balances, because when I added them all up, it showed a difference between the expense and the revenue of 132. And yet, where is that other one? I'm sure there's an explanation, but I just, struggled with trying to figure it out.
You're talking from like your internal financial statements to the audited financial statements?
Probably.
And were you talking about in total again, or were you talking about
Yes,
just the
right,
general
right.
fund?
No, it's just talking in total.
Yeah, I don't have the details, but.
Yeah, we'd have to. Unless there were journal entries. Part of that too, when we converted to the cash basis, we had some effect on that too, possibly, so.
Okay, it just seemed like the difference should have been, pretty much the same, but, maybe it was because of the change in the, modified cash, from accrual to modified cash. I'll go over my figures again, and if I have another question, I'll get back to you. Yeah.
Actually, the majority of it's probably, journal entry number 4. The payroll liabilities were still, it was still set up in QuickBooks to have the liabilities for the payroll where, in order to get that switched to a modified cash, I had to remove a lot of that. Actually, the majority of it.
What page were you looking at?
Well, it's in the small,
It was in the other report that we, the letter.
The letter, the first
The
one.
letter. Not that one,
And it
That one.
filed it.
There, you
This
got
one?
the journal entries
Yeah.
right there. If you go to page,
which is the second page of the journal entry part of
So
it.
page 2.
Adjusting journal entries.
Right.
yeah, if you see, it says
And it has-
4 all the way down the side.
Yes,
there.
yes.
That was one journal entry to get the payroll taxes to a cash basis.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, so there might have been something there.
Yes,
Okay,
And it begins on the previous page, too. isn't
that's
it?
correct.
right,
That's right.
right. Okay,
Not every entry there affects the bottom, the net income, but there is, towards the bottom of the entry there, a lot of those are income statement line items there.
Where it says payroll expense.
Mhm.
Most of that's workman's comp, accrual.
By the IMRF, yep.
accrual,
Mhm.
Like accrual.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I guess need a motion in a second.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Yep, we need a motion to receive and place on file the audit report.
Make a motion to approve and place on file.
Need a second?
Oh, second.
Okay, motion by Zeller, second by Martin.
Just a question.
Hold on.
Just in looking at this, our expenses, our income this year was more than last year because we put in the tax, what we get from the taxes. The replacement tax, we didn't have replacement tax in last year's budget. What we put replacement tax in this year's budget. Is that because of the cash basis?
Should have been in every year.
Yeah, it should always have been in the budget.
Wasn't in last year. There was none in last year.
Shown as other rather than specifically identified.
Well, we had missed, all we had was taxes and miscellaneous in the general.
It might have been in that, for the report purposes, it might have been in that miscellaneous, the
Okay.
replacement tax.
Because in the well, I guess I'm concerned because we also have Social Security this year that was significant amount of money.
More than in the past.
Yeah, more than we've had in the past. And that's why I was, wondering, in 2013, was it Social Security and what we billed other townships?
Which that shows up in the other, like if you're looking
Right.
at, and I don't,
Well, Social Security and billing other townships should show up in other,
Right.
correct? Yes.
so like if you're looking at page 4, those show up in the miscellaneous line item, where the replacement tax would show up in the, it says taxes, property taxes, and then other, the replacement taxes and the other
Okay,
taxes.
what page are you on?
Now, that's on page 4.
Page 4 and 5.
Because it was just a little hard to follow because of some of the changes.
If you want it broken down a little bit more, like on page 7, which actually breaks down the general fund and the GA fund, it says taxes, replacement tax and property tax would both be in that taxes line item.
Okay, so in the tax line item, it would be taxes and replacement.
Right, property taxes and replacement. And then in the miscellaneous there,
That would be Social Security and
Right.
what we bill others.
because that's why that larger number in the GA there on page 7.
All right, then let me look at something else. Because I was just confused when I was looking at this. 13. Page 15, I think. Yeah, see, in last year's audit, we had revenue, and that would have been taxes and replacement also last year.
I'd have to actually look at it to verify it
Yeah.
number-wise,
But since you did it that way this year, I have to assume that that's how you did it last year.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and the 41,000, and, yeah, and our increase, you know, with Social Security came to 49,000, yeah, okay. All right. Okay, so we had more income, from what I can see, but we also had more expenses, even though we've reduced our grant to our clients. So, and we still used about 100 and, whatever that figure was it 168? 132 out of the surplus. Okay, well, that's, you know, we're still kind of eating away at our surplus.
How else can we perform our services?
Oh, Patrick, I don't have any problem with that.
Oh, okay.
My only
I was just
concern
checking.
is that we saved all this money, and yet we also spent it.
We have to function as a township.
So I think that's important to note,
Mhm.
that in spite of what we saved,
Yep.
we wound up spending
We wound
more
up-
than we saved.
We wound up spending in order to provide services, in order to get us to the point to where we are right now. We're functioning better. We are more we're more efficient. We are more smoother. Our client numbers are reducing, and I think we're doing pretty good. And I think the rest of the community feels the same way. All right. Now, for no more questions, we can have our roll call vote.
Okay,
Okay, Martin,
aye.
Sellers?
Aye.
Sellers.
Aye.
Motion passed.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the claims and demands and bills payable. I need a motion and a second, please.
So move.
I don't get it.
Oh, there's some on the table.
No. Usually Barb have it.
I moved.
Here.
Hold on, she can have mine.
Second.
All right, motion by
Second.
Martin, second by Sellers. Okay, now let's take a look at claims and demands.
Usually our food is on the first part of the month, and the gas is on the second part of the month.
That's normal. You know, our rent is usually on the first.
Rent's mostly on the
Yeah.
first, okay.
Yeah.
Rent and food, because all we have here is rent and kind of gas and utilities.
Well, it went down, so.
Yep.
Sounds me.
It did, the gas cards, you mean? Yeah.
The whole booklet. I don't see saving on it at all.
Well, that usually shows up the first part of the month,
You'll probably see it on the next,
so we'll see see it next time.
Now, keep in mind, we have, what, 3 weeks?
Yeah, extra.
So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so you'll see it. It'll be bigger.
Yeah, it's a 5 week.
Check on the roll.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Sellers,
Aye.
Martin. Aye. Sellers.
Aye.
Motion passed.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the supervisor's report, which is me. All righty, the interest we made so far this year on our accounts is $382.24. Not bad as far as our interest goes.
Mhm. That's on changing to the bank,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Are we still doing the Illinois fund, or
No.
we're out of there now?
We're out of there.
Okay,
Yep.
but it still said in here that we were still with the Illinois fund.
It probably, yeah, because we changed it, you know, we were in there part of the year, but
Oh, part of the year.
We were part of the year.
Okay, so it didn't reflect in here then?
no, no.
That we
It'll
changed?
reflect next year.
Okay.
Before I hand this out, I want to hand out this to the board. Earlier this year, one of our caseworkers came to me and asked me a question about addresses on claims and demands. She had heard at Gaddy that we shouldn't be doing this. So I sent an email to Brian Smith, who's over executive director of TOI, and asked him the question. And so he replied with this letter right here.
Addresses.
On claims and demands. Oh, you do? Okay. His recommendation that we do not put addresses on claims and demands, but use a client case number. I want the board to see this and give me your thoughts.
What does Mike say?
Patrick sent me the letter, and I looked at it, and I haven't given him a written response, but I'll tell you off the top of my head, there's an attorney general, there's a federal court opinion saying you cannot release the names of recipients of public welfare services in the state of Illinois. And there's also, when I was the attorney for the Housing Authority, we changed the procedures there so that the board members did not get to know, when they were looking at information, they had no idea what the name of the individual involved with it, because of the duty to maintain client confidentiality, not only to the general public, but also to the board. That way the board could still see the documents, but they didn't have to know who the person was who's going to receive the benefits. And though I haven't put it in writing, it's my intention to put it in writing and recommend that I wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Smith of the township officials of Illinois that it should not be identification materials on those information.
Are you talking about the names of the, these aren't the clients? These
No.
Are you talking about the names of the,
Landlord?
No,
landlords?
no.
What are you talking about?
The addresses,
The clients.
because at Gaddy they said that the address can be used as an identifier.
Okay, so just
Of
have the
clients.
names but no address? Oh, okay, okay.
The address will still be in our records.
Mhm.
Yes,
It just won't be
right,
public knowledge.
right, okay,
So if board members want to come in and see the addresses, you can still come in and see them,
oh, okay,
but just won't be public
okay.
record.
Makes sense to me.
All right. Next, I would like to hand out the expenditure to budget report. Make sure we get that out. There you go. All right. All right. Yeah, okay.
Are we at a kind of a set amount for job search?
Where are we at here?
Oh, I'm sorry, on the last page.
Last page. Yep, job search.
So that's a set amount. When it's gone, it's gone.
Yep,
Okay.
that's it. That was for Illinois Extension Office.
Right, okay. dues and subscriptions are probably not gonna be any more than that?
No.
What we already have there, okay. Where is, oh, food and personal clothing, okay. So we're about 53%
Mhm.
at food, personal clothing, and 35% at rent and shelter. Can we shift between those line items if we had to?
Is it in GA?
Yes, home relief, then, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm
Would-
on the second page.
I believe so. They're in the same, no, Liz, we can shift between, in GA, right?
Within GA,
Mhm.
You'd have to amend do it like a line item
Right,
transfer.
line item transfer, so yes, we can do it within GA.
okay.
All right.
One other thing I was gonna check. So consultants and legal are still kind of, one is 32%, the other's 56%.
Mhm.
Are we gonna be able to hold the line, do you think, on those?
Well, the legal services pretty much depend on what we got going on here with this building. That's pretty much what it. We can make a decision there, then we should be good. I don't know. I hope so too. All right. Next, we are going to cancel our picnic. No picnic this year. It's hard to get dates nailed down where everyone will be available. So maybe we'll try something later on. But as for right now, the picnic is postponed indefinitely. Okay? Next on the agenda is the assessor's report.
I was hoping to be able to give you numbers tonight, but the Chief County Assessment Officer hasn't applied the multiplier, and we've come up with what we believe it's going to be, but I don't give out numbers until they've been validated by him. He was gone last week, so it'll be sometime this week.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Next on the agenda is trustees' report.
Okay, was just looking at our utilities, $4,086. Is that about right for last year?
Yep, that should be about right.
Okay, because I see we budgeted 5,400, so last year it was 4,086, so we budgeted a little bit more this year.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, maintenance, that's 6,000, okay. And maintenance last year. Lot to go through here, sorry. We do a combined, we break out the utilities between the general fund and welfare. We assign some of the utilities to the general fund, some to the welfare fund, or not.
No,
No administrative expenses under welfare, they all come under general.
that's how it's supposed to be
Okay,
broken out.
Okay. Okay. These were just these working trial balances were a little difficult to figure out
I
from that
understand.
perspective. Okay.
I understand.
Okay.
All right. Next on the agenda is public comment Any public comments? Yes.
Hi,
Hello.
Over to the right, please.
to the right, to the,
Where the chair is, please.
the chair, may I stand? My name is Sheila Hooper, 423 West Ringo, Freeport, Illinois, and, what else do you need to know? My social security number, my rank,
No, that's enough.
last 4 digits? Oh, I have a few questions, if I may, sir. Ask you and the board. First
Hold,
question-
1 second. Are we allowed to have questions during public comment?
No, the public comment section, according to the Open Meetings Act, is only for comments to be made. It's not for an exchange of information between elected officials and members of the public.
Oh, yeah, okay, so when do you do that?
In their office or outside of a public meeting.
I see, okay.
Okay.
Well then, let's see, I will just make this a statement then. I have some current concerns, and from, as a taxpaying member of the switch to QuickBooks because of the complexity of the township's books and number of funds. And perhaps I could discuss that with you sometime, Mr. Sellers, and with who I just met, Liz. Thought she was a student observer. And my other comment has regarding the, and I'm sure you have many reasons to do so, but the switching from Illinois funds into all local banks, which is, I will say, certainly a praiseworthy thing to do. But I would hope that the board has received, and a person could FOIA and see collateralization accounts. I just bring that up because I know that every month in the county board, the treasurer provides us with a total listing of investments, what fund, and the amounts that are held in collateralization. Even though she uses Illinois funds, some are invested locally, and those have markings of what is put forth as collateralization. So I don't know if the board's received that report, but how, since you just switched to Illinois, from Illinois funds, you may not have generated that report yet. So.
Not yet, but we will generate it.
And now I know we're not supposed to ask questions, but this is just an informational question as to the date you switched from Illinois funds. Is that an appropriate question?
Is that an appropriate question?
Well, you want to answer, you can answer, but really, this is not a chance. If you know it off the top of your head.
I don't know it off the top of my head. I have to ask.
Well then,
Yes,
thank
so-
you. I'll inquire
Thank you.
or discuss another time about collateralization. I just bring it up because in the county, it's a regular monthly report.
Okay.
What funds are in what bank, and where they come from, and what the collateralization is assigned to each of them.
Okay.
Any questions for me?
No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment, yes.
Ken Bonsack, 1154 West Oregon Street. I had two questions, but I'll now rephrase them into statements apparently. In the article in the papers back in August, the discussion and comments from your office that you, the township was looking into moving out of this building. And then I had the pleasure of meeting with you. And I was surprised and pleased that you said you really wanted to stay here. You thought this was the very best. And having the assessor's office in with you was even better. And I was going to ask, have you changed or who's changed? But that can't be stated tonight. I hope somehow I in public could find that out. And my second question was going to be, and I'll rephrase that too, is one of your comments was in moving to Fifth Third Bank or with any other place, that consolidation with the treasurer's, the assessor's office for utilities would be a saving. But I was going to ask, why wouldn't they be a saving here as well? With the veterans, I would assume that utilities are going to be basically the same wherever you are. But renting would be, I would think, a loser because you qualify, of course, for a non-profit, for not paying taxes, but those are all questions that maybe if you're taking notes on this, you could get back to me.
Yes.
On that and
Yes.
answer those.
Yes.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any more public comments? No? Okay. Other. Okay, before we go into executive session, I need the approval of the board in order to include the CFO, Liz Pettit, in executive session. I need a motion and a second in order to do so.
I make a motion that we include Liz in the executive session.
Yeah, second.
I just want a point of clarification, Michael.
One second, I got it, Bob.
Okay.
Are we allowed to, am I allowed to ask for permission to go into executive session?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, they could either make it as part of the motion to go in executive session and specify who can be in executive session, or you kind of put the cart before the horse in this
Okay.
situation, because we haven't decided yet really to go into
go into-
executive
okay.
executive
That was
session.
what I was
Okay.
trying to get
But-
at.
A point of
Need to go
clarification. When we do this, since the assessor is not part of the board, should we also be
That was
adding-
next. That was next.
Okay, okay,
Thank
because
you.
we didn't do that before.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you, that was next. All right, so, let me reverse back. Next item on the agenda.
Wait a minute. Ms. Solis, do you withdraw your
I
motion?
withdraw
Withdraw?
my motion.
All right.
My second.
Okay,
Withdraw
thank
the
you.
second.
Ms.
Okay.
Solis, so the record's clear.
Record's clear. All right, now, next on the agenda is executive session to discuss A, the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired as authorized by 5 ILCS 120/2C5, and B, litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal as authorized by 5 ILCS 120/2C11. That's a mouthful. All right, Mike.
Now we need a motion.
Need a
Now,
motion.
And to allow the.
Okay.
And then you can do it separately, or you can do it as part of the same motion as to who you want to be in the room.
Okay. So, also include I'd like to also include, right?
The CFO.
The CFO
And the
as well
attorney.
as the attorney and
the assessor.
the assessor. So now I need a motion in a second.
I make a motion that we include the CFO, attorney, and assessor in the executive session
As part of the motion.
as
that's
part
on
of the
agenda.
motion.
Thank you.
I will second that.
Give me a second. So now, we need a roll call vote in order to go into executive session.
Sellers,
Aye.
Martin,
Aye.
Sellers.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, we are now going into executive session, and it is
6:33.
6:33 p.m. All right, one second.
Okay.
All
We're
right.
now back in the open session at 7:18 PM by my watch. The executive session ended. There's only one motion made, and that was to make a motion to schedule a special meeting of the board. Is that what we did?
Trustee Sellers made a motion to have a special meeting on September 22nd regarding pending litigation and conditions of the building, and trustee Martin seconded the motion, and all voted in favor
By roll call vote.
by roll call vote.
Thank you.
Mike, we don't have to have anything in there about the letter you're gonna write to, no, okay.
All right, so we need to make the motion again.
We just read it.
I just read it.
It's public
Oh.
knowledge now. We've just said who
Okay.
made the motion, who seconded it, and how everybody voted.
All right, so we don't need to do anything else then?
That's right.
Okay,
Okay,
now
so,
we can just adjourn.
all right.
if we want to.
Next item on the agenda is adjournment until October,
No, till next Monday.
until next Monday, the 22nd, right?
I make a motion.
At 5 o'clock.
Second.
Okay.
Sellers,
Gotta remember that's 5 o'clock.
okay.
Okay.
Make sure I got that on my.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.
All right, thank you.